Choice, your creative superpower. We have the power to manifest as we dedicate attention to our thoughts, but often miss opportunity to achieve the greatest good. Your superpower is waiting to be unleashed to unlock a fuller, more rewarding world for all. Join us every Thursday at noon Mountain Time for Choice, your creative superpower with Zoe Muro. And now, here's Zoe.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the New Thought Media Network. My name is Zoe Muro, and I am delighted and honored to be your host for Choice, your creative superpower, coming to you each week from Oakland, California. We're here on Thursdays at 12 noon Mountain Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time. Hello, Shay. Good to see you. So good to see people come back. It's always great to have you here again. And for those of you who are here for the first time, welcome. So glad you tuned in. As a religious science practitioner with the New Thought Media Network, I have a ministry. And as a transformational coach, I have a mission. They are both to help people live their lives to the fullest. And what we do here on this show is we explore. We explore how wielding your superpower of choice for the greatest good can co-create a most fulfilling life experience. Today, in episode 73, we'll be exploring the relationship between choice and commitment. Commitment's an interesting word. I wouldn't be surprised if people tend to choose one of its definitions over the other as being more likely what they themselves think of when they think of commitment. So, for example, it could be described as the state or quality of being dedicated to a cause or an activity. For example, a community's commitment to inclusion. Or it can be an engagement or an obligation that restricts freedom of action. For example, a work commitment. Okay. Typical ways of looking at it. But I want you to check out this quote. Believe it or not, this actually appeared on the side. This is so strange. Side of a Starbucks coffee cup. It was written by author and leadership coach Anne Morris, very specifically for Starbucks. And it's definitely thought-provoking. Check this one out. She says, the irony of commitment is that it's deeply liberating in work, in play, in love. The act frees you from the tyranny of your internal critic, from the fear that likes to dress itself up and parade around as rational hesitation. To commit is to remove your head as the barrier to your life. I like it. When I worked in information technology, we used to have a term that we used called analysis paralysis, where people would be analyzing things to the point where they never actually produced anything. All right. They couldn't commit to a specific perspective. They couldn't commit to a specific path. Well, let me get this out of here. There we go. There's certainly a variety of ways to look at commitment. And depending on how you choose to view it, will most definitely make a huge difference in how it affects your actions. You know, there are likely many circumstances and as many reasons why we would choose to make a commitment. For example, if we consider commitment in this way, if we think of it as being the prolonged or ongoing state of being dedicated to a cause, to a community, to a person, to a company, etc. Okay. Every one of us can probably come up with some examples for many of these, if not all of them. The elements of time and focus are important to note here because they provide very clear indications of how commitment affects the choices we make after we have chosen to make a commitment. And this is where you can see a commitment as being either limiting or freeing. When I say limiting, I say that because there's only so much time and attention that we have. But I also think of it as being freeing because it basically establishes a priority, right? That, getting your head out of the way. With that in mind, think of commitments you've made and how you viewed them. I'm willing to bet the ones that you took on because they were in alignment with your values and goals felt freeing or certainly beneficial. At the very least, somewhat neutral. While those you took on purely out of a sense of obligation, those most likely felt limiting. So, how do we translate all that to choice? By being very discerning of those commitments you choose to make, by being aware of your why. That is, understanding the source, the motivation, the presumed outcome of commitment. All right? Okay, so that discernment regarding the commitments we choose can be incredibly important. It's funny. When I think of that, for some strange reason, the idea of a timeshare comes to mind. There is definitely a need to understand precisely what is going to be the outcome of getting a timeshare. But I digress. I suppose I should point out here that not every commitment we have is necessarily one that we actually choose for ourselves. I mean, some we inherit through our relationships. I'm hoping not to inherit a timeshare. Some through our associations. Others as conditions for something that we desire to do or to attend or to be part of. You can think of commitment as being kind of like a transaction. Specifically for our purposes right now, think of it like a withdrawal or a debit. Okay. Actually, it should be a debit or a credit. So what is debiting or crediting, and from where? And let's consider the what first. The what would be things like energy and time, your focus, your finances, things of that nature. The where is the supply of each that you have available to you, whether it's from literally your physical body or whether it's your emotional self or your calendar or your bank account. If you want to take a vacation, thinking about spending your money on new shoes brings up that prioritization. And maybe it would be best if those shoes waited a bit. Well, unless it's a really, really good sale and qualities are limited and order now. Or you can tell the marketing hype to just knock it off. You have other priorities. you have other commitments. If you want to get a promotion at work, spending extra time on high-profile work tasks might be more important than organizing that luncheon. Let's say you've been diagnosed with elevated blood sugar. Spending more time and brain power and thought on ensuring the most nutritious meals possible and figuring out ways that you can exercise to prevent the onset of diabetes would definitely be more beneficial to overindulging in fast food and then plunking yourself down on the couch. Okay? So different types of commitments. And those commitments can feel freeing. They can feel limiting. Considering the outcome of the commitment, that it has to be part of the equation. I have a couple of quotes here that I really like. First one is from Lao Tzu, and the second is from Michael Josephson. So let me get these. Okay, they both appear here. Okay, Lao Tzu said, time is a created thing. To say I don't have time is like saying, I don't want to. Okay. And our second quote, time is not something you find or make. The clock and the calendar move on at their own pace. Your choice is how you use it. I like that a lot. Personally, I have been on the I don't have time track far too long before I switched to the I'll make time track. But Josephson is right. The reality of how much time we have is indeed how we choose to use it. Think about it. How many times have you ensured that you carved out enough time to do something that you deign to be of great importance compared to the number of times that you found time or made time for things that you had absolutely no interest in? When we choose to commit to something, we are encouraging, okay? We are encouraging prioritization, resilience. We're avoiding distractions. We're gaining consistency. Okay, so we can encourage prioritization and resilience. We can avoid distractions. We can gain consistency. Along with those benefits, commitment can also promote accountability, whether it's just to ourselves or to someone else. You know, a few weeks back, we explored goals. Commitment can significantly improve one's ability to manifest the vision the goals are meant to support. Redefining and even eliminating prior choices, and then providing insight and informing our future choices. Seeing just how powerful commitment can be in the choices that we make, it's equally important to consider how the choices we make can affect our commitments. Of course, we need to choose to make a commitment. Personally, a commitment that I am given but did not choose myself, well, personally, I see that as more of an obligation. Now, as a result of that obligation, I might very well make a commitment. And I most certainly have, especially when I'm It was to ensure that I don't get blindsided by an obligation without understanding what its ramifications are. Okay. Now, you might say, well, why is that such an issue? Consider this. When you aren't given rather, the ability to voluntarily choose to commit to something without being guilted into it or literally being given no choice, you might run afoul of your own values and beliefs. That would be a bad situation because that would take us out of our integrity. And frankly, it's hard to see how that would turn out well. If you are not living in integrity, nothing good comes of that. Now, let's say it's not quite that bad a situation. All right. When you are free to choose your own commitments. Under those circumstances, a very important factor can come into play, a factor called ownership. You feel responsible, and that can make a world of difference. Remember, when we use the word responsible, there's a couple of different ways you can look at that. Oftentimes we look at it as being, oh, I am responsible for this. I have an obligation for this. But another way of looking at responsible is I am able to respond, right? I'm capable of doing the things that I need to do to respond to whatever it is that I'm being asked. So it's kind of a cascading effect, right? Think about it. The more ownership you feel for a task, the greater the likelihood that you'll be motivated to complete it. And the more likely you are to be able to consistently address it. In fact, the effect of ownership extends even further than that. So that should difficulties arise, as they often do, one would be more likely to be more creative and more flexible, and therefore more likely to be able to follow through on the commitment. If a commitment is something that you have chosen to make, as opposed to being the result of an obligation or an order, we are actually creating an expression of our values and beliefs. We're putting those values and beliefs from within, and we're putting them into action outside. And that as within, so without is a wonderful mantra. A good barometer of the appropriateness and the viability of a commitment might very well be discerning if making that commitment is indeed in alignment with our values and beliefs. Whether we're speaking of our spiritual, cultural, ethical, or moral values and beliefs, staying in integrity means walking our talk. Now, are there downsides to the choices that you make relative to commitment? You could say that, I suppose, considering that, well, committing your time, for example, means limiting or not engaging at all in some other pursuits. Just as if you commit your finances to something, then you don't have that money available for other things. So there are indeed sacrifices and trade-offs. It is important then, when you're considering a commitment, all right, do I want to choose to make that commitment? Ensure that you are clear and willing to undertake all aspects of the commitment. This next quote that I have is from Carol Dweck. She's an educator and the author of the classic book mindset. Let me bring this up. Carol says, you don't know what your abilities are until you make a full commitment to developing them. You don't know what your abilities are until you make a full commitment to developing them. I wanted to include that quote because it's a way of introducing an idea for your consideration. I think commitment is often thought of as something that we do for someone else or for something else. Committing to care for a loved one, or to advance a cause, or to support a community or an organization. But what about you? I don't mean what cause or loved one have you committed to. Rather, I mean, what commitments have you made to and for yourself? When I say commitment, all the same features apply to your own commitments as much as they do for others. Give an example. Let's say your doctor has found a weakness in your body, and that is the cause of your pain. Pain significant enough to limit your daily activities. The doctor prescribes several sessions with a physical therapist who works with you to develop a routine for addressing that issue. You attend every session and you'll walk away with that routine tucked into your back pocket. Now, does the routine go up on the wall where you'll see it each day? Or does it stay in your pocket? Do you choose to set aside time each day for the routine? Because this is meant to eliminate the problem, right? Do you see that time as a must-do? Or are you willing to just blow it off if someone invites you to do something that, it sounds like more fun during that time? Your ability to see the commitments that you make for yourself as being vital parts of your life can bring about a greater life experience for you and for others. As a parent, I can tell you how easy it is to put one's needs aside in the vain belief that our children would not be getting the attention they need. I get it, truly. But imagine if your child came up to you and said they weren't going to do what they needed to do to stay healthy because they wanted to help someone else. As much as their sacrifice seems noble on the one hand, and actually is, on the other, it's a losing proposition. How can they help a friend if they themselves fall ill? What would you say to them? Would you say, great, too bad you'll be wearing yourself out in no time? I kind of doubt that. Or would you counsel them to be more realistic and help them to find a way to do what they can within reason? Okay. Whenever I consider a choice that I'm making for myself, and I'm thinking that that's not important, I'll always look at it in terms of, what if I were talking to one of my children? What if I were talking to one of my grandchildren? What if I were talking to a loved one or a friend? Like, would I give them the same advice that I'm giving myself? We need to love ourselves. We need to commit to that love. We need to be compassionate with ourselves. We need to commit to that compassion. One last thought about commitment. Have you heard the one about the chicken, the pig, and the bacon and eggs breakfast? The chicken is involved in breakfast, but the pig, well, the pig is most definitely committed. When it comes to commitments that can make a real difference in life, be the pig. Yep, be the pig. With all due apologies to vegans and vegetarians and pigs. Well, on that bizarre note, we're done for this week. So, what's on your mind regarding choice and commitment? Were there commitments that you made that went well or didn't go so well? Was that outcome of it's going well or not well brought about by something you did? Something you didn't do? Let me know. Okay, I'm always interested in hearing how one of these talks brings you to a place of aha or because that's really what this is all about. It's not about telling you this is the answer. It's about asking you, does this resonate with you? What do you think of this? How does this affect your life? Does this bring you something that makes things better? Does it cause you to wonder? That's what I'm all about here. Okay. So if there is something that you have that you would like to discuss, you can connect with me at zodimuro@gmail.com. And I am available for practitioner sessions, for coaching, for discussion or prayer. I'm also available as a speaker. So, I want you to know that as much fun as I had being able to provide this time for you, I want you to recognize that there is so much out here on the New Thought Media Network. All right, if you go to ntmedia.org, there's tons going on. Let me just give you a couple of ideas for what's going on today. 1 p.m. Mountain Time, the most delightful Reverend Gina Calvario Krupka presents The Joys in the Journey. Okay. 2 p.m. Mountain Time, Practitioner Ken Ludwig presents The Vibrant Living Hour. 4 p.m. Mountain Time, Reverend Brock Ford presents The Spiritual Toolkit. Everything that we do here on the New Thought Media Network is part of our mission to bring the joy of new thought to the widest audience possible. We do this through our presentations. We do this through our prayers. We do this through all of the different shows that we produce, but we also need to spread the word, right? We need to get out there and do as much as we possibly can, because it's not about the philosophy. It's not about the tenets. It's about the joy, the benefits that can come from being able to use new thought effectively. That takes time, it takes talent, and yes, it takes treasure. So if you could go to ntmedia.org/donate. A one-time donation or an ongoing donation would make this a world that works for everyone. We would greatly appreciate that. So I will, of course, look forward to seeing you again next week. And I trust that you will choose well, choose wisely, choose often. Allow your life to be what you choose it to be. I'll see you next week. Namaste.
Choice, your creative superpower. We have the power to manifest as we dedicate attention to our thoughts, but often miss opportunity to achieve the greatest good. Your superpower is waiting to be unleashed to unlock a fuller, more rewarding world for all. Join us every Thursday at noon Mountain Time for Choice, your creative superpower with Muro.